Hi. I've contemplated quite a bit whether or not I should do a video about what's going on in society today and the riots and the looting and the killing of unarmed men and the racism that seems prevalent. And I thought about whether or not it was a good idea for me to even express some of my views. And after much thought and much careful thought, I believe that this is the prudent thing to do. So I want to talk to you about some of the things that are happening in society today. I know that there are those of you who don't understand why so many people are being, we'll call it over the top. Why they don't just protest peacefully. Why they seem to be angry, upset. I want to be honest with you. I've cried over the last few days. I've cried because of all the unrest and the pain and the suffering I see on these faces and hearing these voices and then of course of the murder of George Floyd. And there's no other way to put it than to say that he was murdered on the street in a cold and inhumane way. He was treated like an animal with a knee to his neck, gasping for breath and asking to let him breathe. That's not okay. And then we see the result of people who have tried so long to have this type of thought towards a race to be talked about, to be considered. You know, we hear Black Lives Matter and people are like, well, you know what, Blue Lives Matter and all lives matter. And you know what, that is correct. Blue lives do matter. All lives do matter. The issue is that all lives should matter, but they don't. And that's what gave rise to Black Lives Matter. And we say Black Lives Matter, but what we're really saying is Black Lives Matter too. They matter just as much as anyone else's life. All lives should matter, but they don't. And that's what we saw just recently with George Floyd. And not just George Floyd, but also with Ahmaud Arbery. And we look and people are saying, well, we think that you are going overboard. We don't feel that way. We love everyone. And you know what? There are some of you who do. But you got to understand that there are some that don't. Think about Amy Cooper and how she's standing in a park and if someone simply asks her to leash her dog like the law states, but she refuses to do so and then threatens to call the police and say that this man threatened her life because she knew that would create fear in this man, and she knew that anything could happen to that man and felt that she would be okay. And if that man did not videotape it, we may be talking about a whole different story. You know what? If George Floyd didn't die on the street, people would not be rioting. People would not be looting. We wouldn't have the protests. If he came within an inch of his life but somehow survived that incident, people would just go about their lives. But that's not what happened. He died on that street in cold-blooded murder. But it makes me afraid, it makes other people afraid to think that if he didn't die, then this would just continue to go on. That cop would still be a cop. And he would just continue to do this because he's not being stopped. Sometimes the power and authority given to somebody is greater than they can handle. And that's why, I'm calling on police officers anywhere and everywhere. Stand up. I've seen it now. I've seen it on the media where police officers are kneeling down with protesters or police officers are taking off their gear and saying, hey, come on, let's not make this a protest. Let's make this a parade. I'm here with you. Police officers praying with people. Police officers holding people and crying with them. Police officers standing up and saying that man needs to be prosecuted because he murdered that man. There are good officers out there, and they deserve to be valued and treated respectfully. And it's a shame that just a few put a bad name on many. We have police officers in our church congregation who are wonderful people, people who are in love, and I'm proud to call my brothers and sisters. But again, it's just the few that damage and taint the image of the many. And so, yes, with everything going on, we have people that have decided that they have no hope and no way out of this mess that keeps happening unless they protest. And not just protest in any way, but protest in a way that people will hear. I was talking with our youth group, and they were talking about why are people like this? Why are we even having these riots? Why are they, is it Black Lives Matter? Why is there racism? And there's a hard questions to answer. But one of the things I shared with them is that, when I'm with my child, and my child, she keeps wanting to get my attention, but I'm not really paying attention. Maybe she pulls on my pants leg, or she tugs on my shirt sleeve, and she's like, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." And maybe I'm working or something of that nature, and I'm not really giving her my full attention. She may act out. She might be like, "Daddy, Daddy, I'm talking to you." She comes in my lap and puts her face right in front of mine, and that's her way to make sure, like, "Daddy." And then at that time, I realized I've been answering her, but I've not been listening to her. And so you've seen people doing peaceful protest. You've seen it on the football fields, where people like Colin Kaepernick kneeled on the ground. And as a result, he lost his job in the NFL. You saw how the president, entered into that situation and condemned those type of peaceful acts. And I want to be clear about that too. I know a lot of people are like, "I hate the president. He's a horrible person." No. That's not what we need to do. What we need to do is to show love and compassion and to pray for him. And I know that's not going to be a popular thing for me to say, but you know what? At the end of the day, he is the president. And that office should mean something. And whether or not he's acting in a way that you're pleased with, or I'm pleased with, or the masses are pleased with, I encourage you to pray for him and ask that he be given godly wisdom. I can't imagine, again, the pressure that he's been under, trying to understand how to do things. And you know what? He's missed the mark. That's the reality. We miss the mark sometimes as well. And sometimes he's missed it pretty badly. And it's hurt. And it's caused pain. It's caused a lot of pain. And you know what? If I were talking in front of the president, I would say, "Hey, we need to change our tone in the way that we're talking." I don't have that opportunity, but if I did, I would tell him that. You cannot expect people not to be violent when you're telling them that you're going to use violence to keep them from being violent. That's just not the right way to go. This morning, I woke up to read about how tear gas and rubber bullets and different things were used to disperse the crowd at the White House so that he could walk across the street to the church and hold up a Bible. And I'm a Christian, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't pleased with that. But he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't. That's why we need to pray for him. I know that's not going to be a popular thing to say on either sides. But that's the reality of what we have. And not just pray for him, we need to pray for those in Congress that ask that God would lead them in a way and give them wisdom. We need to pray for our governors and ask that God would lead them and give them wisdom on how to deal with their states. And we need to pray for the mayors of these different cities where the protests are being held and explain to them that, hey, they need to act in a way that shows people that they care. We need to do that. And some of the mayors have stepped up and are trying to address the situation and asking the police officers to do it in a way that will help encourage people to protest peacefully. And I thank God for that. I want us to also pray for those police officers. There are a lot of good ones out there. Good ones in our community. I have good ones that go to my church who I love, and they're my brothers and sisters in Christ, and I thank God for them. Good people. And again, it's a shame that just a few people tarnish the bunch. But nevertheless, we need to pray for them and ask for their protection as well, because I tell you what, we need them. And they need to understand that they need us as well. They need people like us who pray for them and are not attacking them. And we need people that will not attack us simply because of the way we look. I know some of the people out there are thinking, well, racism isn't that bad. I've heard that. Racism isn't that bad. What is that bad? What does that really even mean? Racism is a horrible thing. It's telling somebody that they are not of value. And when that man put his knee into that man's neck and kept it there even after he was lifeless, simply because he could, and he showed how he devalued him as a human being, that should give rise to everyone's spirit. Everyone's spirit. And I thank God for those who are African American, Caucasian, Hispanic, Asian, whatever ethnic background you are. I thank God for those that rose up and have walked and protested together to show that this is not something that is acceptable in our society in 2020. Because it's not. But this devaluing of human life has got to come to an end. And it's up to us to help it bring it to an end. And when you see people out there rioting and looting, instead of calling them thugs and saying when the looting starts, the shooting starts, or instead of putting them down as just horrible people, let me share something with you. With coronavirus happening, and I'm not going to make an excuse, but I want you to hear this. With coronavirus happening, people being locked up in their homes, people losing their jobs, businesses being destroyed, people not knowing how they're going to pay their bills, people not knowing where food is going to come from. And then on top of all that, you have people that are killing innocent people jogging along the road, or killing someone just because that person may have used a fake $20 bill. That was what the whole thing was about. A $20 bill. I don't know whether it happened or not, but it doesn't matter that someone should lose their life over $20. I mean, come on. And they're not the only ones. This has been happening so many times. At some point, something has to give. At some point, someone's going to rise up and their thought process is not going to be a gentle one. It's just not. Someone lost their husband. Someone lost their son. Someone lost their uncle. Someone lost their father. Someone lost their brother. Someone lost their sister. Think about what recently happened where this lady was in her own home and the police officers broke in and they killed her. That's a painful thing to have to experience. It's not okay. The lady in the park with that young man, with that man who just wanted her to leash her dog. And she knew because she was white and he was black that if she called the police, that they would immediately take her side and go against this black man. If he did not have something recording showing that he was doing the right thing, that he was innocent, her threat was, I will call the police and tell them that you are threatening my life. And it's like, and then we'll see what happens. Because I don't value your life. And I don't value you. as a person. And you're black and I'm white, and so those police officers are going to take my side, and you are going to be the person that receives punishment or justice from her standpoint. That's not okay. And just the fact that she believed that she could do that tells us where we are as a society today. And so, when you look at these things where people are rioting or people are protesting and people are just asking for some type of justice, where there is social injustice, please don't turn your head. Please don't look away. We need social justice. We need police officers to stand up. And we need a whistleblower law so police officers are able to come forward and talk about something without fear of retaliation. That one officer knew that he should have gotten up. He knew he should have stopped the other officer with the knee in the neck, but he did nothing. Each of those officers did nothing. Certainly one of them, or more of them, should have known that this was going too far. That this man's life was in danger. They checked his pulse. And even though they knew that his pulse, that he had no pulse, they continued to hold him in that position. That's murder. That's horrible. That's inhumane. I had to tell our youth group how I had to have a talk with my son to tell him how to talk to officers. It's not just being respectful. My son's respectful as he is. But it's also making sure you don't make any quick movements. It's making sure that when they come, you put your hands on the dashboard. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. That if they ask you to get out of the car, you don't just sit there and ask, why do I need to? No. You get out of the car. Spread your legs. You spread your legs. Put your arms on the car. You put your arms on the car. Whatever it takes in order to de-escalate that situation. And you always speak kindly. And then when it's all over and your life has been kept, that's when you can raise the issue. I can't imagine how many people just didn't have the opportunity to say exactly how it was because their lives were snuffed short. We try to judge people by what we see on cameras, but then we hear different things. And that, for instance, that toxicology report, the first thing that they come out with is he probably had intoxicants, possibly had intoxicants. They didn't even do a toxicology. And then they said he didn't die from asphyxiation or something like that. It was probably just some kind of medical issue. That's the kind of things that make us not trust the process. Racism is prevalent and it needs to be stopped. And we need your help to stop it. We need people to speak out. We need people to take a stand. And we need people to show the love of Christ to others. Have I ever experienced racism? Of course I do. I experience it today. Meaning in today's time. I'm married to a Caucasian woman. I have a Caucasian stepson. And when we go to the store, we go to one of these big box stores where they scan your receipt and then they scan your groceries. But they usually scan one item in your receipt and make sure that everything matches and they assume the number is correct and they send you on. And that's what I see. I see the person in front of me, a Caucasian person. They'll have a cart full of groceries and they'll scan their receipt and they'll scan one of the grocery items and they'll tell them you can go ahead. And then when me and my family get up there, they scan my receipt. Then they start scanning grocery items and they start counting the grocery items in my cart to see whether or not I have the same number of items on my cart that I have on my receipt. And I look at my stepson and he just looks at me and he shakes his head. I look at my wife and she looks down. And they see firsthand how we're treated differently, African Americans. I mean, there have been so many different instances. I can talk to you about things that happened in college and in high school. I can talk to you about things that have happened on my job. I can tell you about things that have happened in the church, where a lady asked me to go and get her purse from her car. We were good friends. I went ahead and grabbed it for her and brought it to her. And then she told me that I should be thankful that she trusted me to go out to her car to get it. As though I should be thankful for me doing something for her, because she didn't think I was going to steal something from her purse. That's where our society is, to some degree, and that's not right. So I want you to understand this. I want you to understand that there is a reason why people are upset. There's a reason why people are hurt, and there's a reason why people are doing the things they are doing. Even if you consider the unemployment rate right now going on, people being locked up in their homes, people being told they can't go out, and then you saw some protesting happening with that, and then all of a sudden you have more social injustice, and people got to see firsthand racism on their screens 24/7. And yes, it made people angry, and yes, it made people do things that legally they should not do, that morally they probably shouldn't do. But you know what? Sometimes people act out when they feel there is no hope. And that's what we need to change. We need to help them to understand there is hope. There's hope in Christ. There's hope in God. There's hope. As long as you have Christ, you have hope. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. So when we have faith, it gives us hope. And I have hope for a better future for my son. I have hope for a better future for my kids. I have hope for a better future for my family. And when that hope is violated, when that hope is tested by things that are happening in society, of course it discourages me. Of course it discourages others. So I've made a decision that I am not going to be silent about social injustice. And I made a decision that I'm not going to be silent about things that are happening in my community that I need to show are not right. And you know what? I'm going to pray for our president. And I'm going to pray for our governors and those in leadership. I'm going to pray for our mayors. I'm going to pray for our city. I'm going to pray for our country. I'm going to pray for the police officers. And I'm going to pray for those that are citizens who fear for their lives every time they're stopped by a police officer. And if there's any way I can be in the middle, in the balance, and help people to understand the situation, I'm going to do that, because that's the right thing to do. I hope that things improve. And I'll be honest with you, even with all of the protests, at some point, people are going to move on. But I'm asking that if you're in agreement that this is not right, that you put in people in office that will help us to fix the situation, that you write to your governor and write to your mayor and write to whomever will listen and ask for a whistleblower law, where police officers are given immunity or are able to speak without fear of retaliation against others who are committing crimes against humanity. Thank you, and God bless.